Welcome to my YouTube tutorial on how to apply textures to your character's clothing, or really anything for that matter, by using the tools present in Clip Studio Paint. We're going to be using the Mesh Transformation tool and the Liquify tool to apply a flat texture and give it some perspective and some distortion to follow these folds. To start off, we're going to need a texture, and I like to just go to textures.com. You'll have to make a free account, and we're just going to use a fabric texture. This method works pretty well for anything, but I'm just using this plain fabric texture here. I've already downloaded it. I don't have enough credits for the larger versions, but I'm going to be shrinking this down to make it fit on the file anyways. So let's just hide what we did originally, and I'm just going to drag and drop our texture into Clip Studio, and it creates a new file. So we're just going to copy this and paste it back into the original. And what I had worked with before was doing a 2x2, so this time I'm going to do a 3x3. So we can copy and paste it again and hold shift click on the transform to keep it from going up and down. And then I'm going to use the arrow keys to match the exact pixel. And there you go, there's the advantage of using a seamless texture. Actually, I'm going to undo that, and I'm just going to copy it one more time to make it 3x3. And here I am going back to the old habits of just using the arrow key to move it over with the transform tool. Right there we are. As you may have noticed, this is a highly technical tutorial. Don't get discouraged. It's pretty easy to do. I just have to do this initial setup with the texture in order to use it. You don't have to do all this if you get a texture that's just large enough without being seamless anyways. Oops, did a little error there because I didn't actually have it selected. And again, using the arrow keys to line it up. And then just merging all of the layers, making sure we got it all in one. And I'm going to duplicate this because I want to reuse this texture for the other side of the shirt. And we can just move it right in. And I'm applying this under the lines for now. Let's see here. And you can go ahead and rotate it and kind of see what it would look like. Actually, first I'm going to put on the layer mode, which is going to be the overlay. And this will preserve any color information that's present from our underlying layers, be it the color layer and the initial shadows layer. I think that's probably going to be small enough, so we'll just hit cancel. We want to have this, straight in the X and Y. We don't want to have rotation on it, because when we go into the mesh transformation tool, and that was edit, transform, mesh transformation, we see we have these lattices that line themselves up with the texture. And we have a control over how many of these lattice points we have. If we're doing a larger area of the character, we might want more lattice points, but this will be fine for now. And so I can click on the outside of it and rotate it just like I can with the regular transform tool. But then I also have these lattice tools, which I can use to start adding some distortion and start defining the major overall form of the character. And what I'm going to do with these outside ones, now that I've moved the inside ones in just to get them out of the way, is I'm going to take these outside lattice points and line them up with the actual outline of the character, because this is pretty well going to follow the form and the perspective. With this particular outfit anyways, the idea is to follow the form and the perspective of whatever you're trying to texture. It just so happens to be pretty easy in my case because the lines also follow that, and I can just follow the lines with these outside layers. And then I also want these two to be closer because that part of the image is further away, or that part of the character rather. And I like to have a little bit of a swoop here to kind of overemphasize things. And if you've got some larger textures, then what you might want to do is actually line it up so that the stitches line up with your line as well. Might bring this in a little bit and bring this down or up. I don't know. I'm going to bring all of these over and these over so we can continue to get that perspective that I was mentioning. Basically, the closer to the camera it is, the closer together the lattice points are going to be, and the further away it is, the further away the lattice points are going to be. And on that vertical, I just want to keep it kind of up and down. Anyways, this isn't the final image, but you can, if you're a 3D modeler, you might try to make these look like they were actual polygons and set up your perspective that way. I'm just going to stretch this one out to give us a little bit of extra room to work with, and I'm happy enough with that. And you can see we're going way over the edges of the character, and that's because when we come back with the Liquify tool, we might bring some of that in. But what we need to do now is apply a layer mask, which is going to be really useful for this. If you haven't used the layer mask before, the way that it works is you can erase anything, and then you can just come back in with a hard mill pen and bring it back in if you wanted to. But you just want to use the hard eraser to erase out anything that is outside of the object you're trying to texture. Now, I've already done this a few times, so I'm just gonna control select one of my earlier masks, invert it, and use a big eraser and just erase everything out. There's a few areas that weren't part of that mask, so I'll just go back in again. Right, we've got this masked out now. The texture doesn't go outside of the lines. So I'll just go back into the actual layer now, and this is where we're going to start working with the Liquify tool. And really, there's no definitive answer on where to start. I'm not going to start with the folds though. Don't start with the folds. Start by trying to fix any perspective issues that you couldn't quite fix using the mesh transformation tool. And then we can go back, and what I did there was just using the expand and pinch tool to expand and pinch the texture, and let's just zoom out and get a look, and I think that's pretty good. I think I want to expand here just a bit more. And alright, now we can start on air folds, and I'm gonna just start again with the expand tool, and you can see pretty clearly in the lines. This is one of the few areas where my lines actually made sense. So I'm just going to hit this area very softly with the expand tool. I'm going to continue it on a little bit past the lines. I'm going to use the shrink tool on the sides. And I'm going to continue that on for a little bit too. The expand and the shrink tools are pretty good at setting up the initial folds. And then for highly creased areas, we'll want to just focus on the push tool for that. And I have these laces that are coming in, so I definitely want to expand that because those laces are going to cause some stretching on the fabric. And I'm going to shrink down a few areas where I think I may have overexpanded. And it's good to use big brushes. You can kind of see what this is doing. I don't have brush size set to pen pressure, but you can set your brush up however you want. I think I need a little bit more expand here. A little bit more shrink here. And you can see it kind of pulls from the outside of the brush into the center. So you definitely need to have a brush that's larger than the area that you're wanting to affect, because it's going to pull and push the textures in and out just from your brush area. Anyways, I think that's set up pretty good. So we'll go back with the push tool and we'll start to autosave. It may look a bit more distorted when you go up close, but just remember, you know, nobody's really going to be looking at it that close. So the push tool, I can come right into these seams and I can add a ton of distortion into these seams and actually get like a crease effect by pushing one side into the seam one direction and pulling the other direction. And for these types of folds, I've found a bigger brush kind of got me the type of distortion that I wanted, because these are those types of folds that are sharp on one side and then sharp on the other. And I can go back with a smaller one just on the inside lip and create that crease I was talking about before, where the texture isn't going to line up anymore at that fold. We zoom out, have a look at how it looks. And you can call this quits, but there's another detailing step that you can add. Actually, textures, the further turned away they are from the camera, the less apparent the textures could be. So one thing you can do is come in on this side and use a blur tool. And you see that creates a nice effect. But if I just blur it all the way up, and you can see with our layer on overlay, it doesn't matter at all if I have that layer on. So a simpler and more iterative method of doing this is to just go back into our mask and now use a soft brush instead of a hard one and just mask out a slight amount of the layer there. And we can always, of course, play around with our settings, our opacity, and if you've got a different sort of texture than this, then maybe one of these other blending modes will work for you. But I think I'm happy with that. So once I post this to YouTube, I'm gonna go and do the other side then. Anyways, that concludes this tutorial. I hope you learned something, and I hope you have fun drawing. Peace out.